Okay, so as Dave mentioned in his talk about the journal, one of the logos in there was for the Software Sustainability Institute, which is really a sister project for the SoundSoftware project that we are, and Steve is here to talk a little bit about that. So Steve Crouch, over to you.
Great, thanks Mark. Yeah, so obviously here today we've talked a lot about software in the sound domain, and the SSI is kind of at a wider kind of level. So whilst we're not dealing perhaps at the specialist kind of domain level that SoundSoftware would within the sound domain, we have specialists within software engineering and development of software per se, working with researchers across a whole suite of domains. And I'd just like to draw people's attention to the first part of the slide, first part of the title. Software is not static. So this is an important point, because if software generally has a purpose to be, it has a good reason for existing, then software is generally going to change. That software is going to need to change. Because if it's deemed to be useful, then other people are going to want to use it. So therefore it could be to support other functionality that other people might want from the software. And in addition to that, it could be that even if the functionality of the software doesn't change, the environment around the software is very likely to change. And so in either case, the software itself needs to adapt and change in order to support its environment and its users. And so an important realization over especially the last decade, is that software in general is definitely becoming very much a part of the national kind of zeitgeist. They're kind of really starting to see the importance of software across a number of disciplines. So, for example, climate modelling. We also have transport modelling as well, simulations of transport systems, high energy physics. All this kind of stuff's gathering a lot of media attention. And of course we have medicine as well, and personal health. And so it's very important for us as a discipline, I think, in general, in terms of developing software, that we make sure that we actually try and do this in the best way we can, to avoid the kind of slip-ups that perhaps you've heard of, such as ClimateGate. Who's heard of ClimateGate? Right. So avoiding embarrassment is actually a very good motivator. And of course, coupled with this is we have the changing role of software itself. I suppose coupled with this, perhaps in addition to this. So software now has a much greater lifetime of effectiveness than perhaps before. In going back just only perhaps 5 or 6 years, I was working in grid computing, and typically what would happen is you'd have software that's being developed on the grid that showed up something really fantastic. Look, we got this piece of software working with this other piece of software in Europe, and isn't it fantastic? And then it would be forgotten about as everything else was moving very, very quickly. But the lessons learned often were lost with that kind of development of integration of the software. And one of those things that's needed to be captured is that kind of knowledge, that kind of expertise in actually developing the software. Because those lessons that are learned are often very, very important. So it's not just about making sure that the software itself is developed in a very mature way, or at least in a more mature way, but also capturing those lessons that have been learned whilst developing it. And of course, moving on from that, keeping it useful within its originating community, is the fact that other people want to use that software. And so having the right software when it comes along, people will say, I want to use that too. Other communities start saying, that's useful, I need that. That'll help me to do X, Y, and Z. And so making it exploitable by others and allowing other people to use the software and sharing it in the right way is equally important. And of course, also the other thing we're seeing is that it's not just high energy physics where software is being developed and it's being very useful. Obviously, there's more humanity-based disciplines, social science, humanities and arts, for example, and of course, sound research, where this is becoming far more important. So software is being developed in these disciplines, and they're needing to learn the right kind of tools and techniques to actually develop software in the right way. And one of the most important things that we brought up today quite a lot, I think, was that a culture of reuse, while we see it as being important, typically isn't really happening to a very great degree at the moment, and how best to actually try and sort of make that sort of progress happen. And of course, importantly, as we discussed a lot today also, reproducibility. We talked about, earlier there was discussion about data management plans, and part of that data management plan, of course, could be software. But perhaps software itself should have its own types of management plans, because software is a more active version of data, if you will. It's something that needs to evolve, it needs to support its environment in order to continue to operate. So how do we support this? Right, so one thing we did, going back quite a way now, a few years, we had this project called Engage. And what we did is we interviewed lots of researchers and said, right, what are the problems here? You know, what kind of problems do you have when it comes to sustaining your software, keeping it operational over the lifetime of your project or beyond? And so we asked quite a lot of questions, and two major viewpoints came through. One, sustainability is not an issue for researchers. We want others to take the software over subject to IP issues and for them to maintain it. And second of all, is that sustainability is a big issue. We want to do this ourselves, but we're not really sure how to do it. And around about the same time, a paper was written, well, a survey was done by Greg Wilson from the software carpentry fame. And he came up with some figures in a paper called How Scientists Use Computers in 2009. And he said 45% said scientists spent, of 2,000 researchers, spent more time today developing software than 5 years ago. That was in 2009. And 38% of scientists spend at least 1/5 of their time developing software. So this is actually something that's steadily starting to increase. And coupled with that, when we actually look at what they actually know about software engineering, 47% of scientists have a good understanding of software testing, and only 34% of scientists think that formal training in developing software is important. So it's an interesting point of view, and it's one of those things that we have to try and address in terms of the mindset of the way people think about the software they're developing, and also, you know, helping them to improve their skills and their techniques they're using to develop software. So how best to do that? Well, of course, you have sound software in the software in the sound domain, but also within a more wider spectrum, you have the Software Sustainability Institute. And so basically the deal behind this was really to create an institute that would actually help those researchers, because we firmly believe that better software does enable better research. And we've seen this time and time again in some of the case studies where we've been working with lots of projects. An important realization is that as software develops and goes through its life cycle, it encounters barriers, and these barriers actually prevent it from moving on to the next stage of its natural development. So where you have a tool, for example, that's being used in a research group, just a single research group, the skills necessary to maintain it within that research group may well exist, but then someone says from outside the research group, we'd like to use that too. And then suddenly, the people in the original research group go, the software's not in the right state to do so, we don't have the skills to maintain it at that level, if you want to contribute code, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And even more than that, when it actually starts to branch out into a community as a whole, and other people start to use it, perhaps it could become endemic, and lots of other people start using the software outside of that original community. And as it reaches each of these kinds of stages, what kind of skills needed to be imparted to the originating developers and the communities that support this software so it can actually progress to the next stage? And that's basically where we come in. And so we provide a number of services that actually try and assist this kind of process of learning and skills transfer. And so one of the things we do, for example, is we can review software, so we can have a look at it and see where it is at its stage of maturity, determine the kind of issues that it probably has in terms of progressing to another stage of development. And also looking at the collaborative aspects of communities as well, how the communities engage around the software. We've actually done an evaluation at Rutherford Appleton Laboratories of their ICAT software, for example. And what we did is we had to look at kind of the interactions and the groups around the software. Because what they really wanted to do was to try and use the software within a much wider community, within an initiative called EUDAT, and also Pan Data ODI. And this actually would mean that the software would be used by an order of magnitude more institutions, and they weren't sure how best to arrange their development processes and improve the software so that they could actually use the software at that wider kind of level of use. We also do a lot of things such as we write best practice guides as well, guides for development such as how to use code repositories, how to select a code repository, how to write good code, so on and so forth. If you're interested, feel free to look at our website, which we'll come to at the end. There'll be a link at the end. And also about community building, so we can try and assist groups in building the communities around their software as well. And so we also, coupled with this, obviously have some long-term kind of goals which fit within this. First of all, the provision of useful and effective services that kind of embody the kind of things we want to try and assist with communities. The development and sharing of research community intelligence and interactions, so where we're able to determine that there's something happening that's interesting in a certain community that others should know about, we can promote that. and also where interactions are starting to occur within various communities as well. So perhaps within a sub-community of a certain domain, there's a number of institutions talking about using a piece of software, but perhaps there's another set of institutions that would be very, could have some valuable input into that, so we can actually help them to actually start talking amongst themselves as well. And of course there's promotion of research software best practice. So where we've identified this, we can publish this on our website. And also, as Dave quite rightly said earlier, there's the Journal of Open Research Software, which is a very valuable initiative that we support. And so, coupled with all of these long-term goals and things that we do, we have a mantra, and this basically is to make sure the software stays in its respective community. So even though we might have a long-term development project with a certain community to improve their software, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'd be taking the software on ourselves. It really means we're trying to show them how to improve the software. So we might be making some improvements, but we'll be showing them how to make those improvements themselves, so they can take those skills and employ them later within their domain. And yes, so the key point here is we're not introducing a dependency on SSI as a developer. We're making sure that the communities themselves are able to continue this on their own. And so there's a number of ways in which we do this. First of all, we have collaborative assistance, and this is basically where we identify projects and areas that need some assistance. And this could be improving software, it could be improving skills, it could be improving the way that teams collaborate. And this could be done in a long-term way. So, for example, if there were a piece of software that needed some refactoring on quite a wide scale, this could actually initiate a long-term collaboration with that project to improve their software with our assistance. But more, what we're seeing lately is that short-term consultancy seems to be a lot more flexible. So what we're doing more lately is we're actually identifying very short iterations of improvement with projects, and then continually addressing further issues within that project as they arise in a more flexible kind of way over a period of time. So instead of having a long project, we do more kind of iterative steps of projects. And of course, we also run sustainability surgeries and a variety of workshops as well. And I'll come on to one of the important ones later. And your dear here, 4 minutes. Thanks. And of course, training. So something that we do with the SoundSoftware project, for example, is to train in terms of within the software carpentry field. So has anyone here actually gone on a software carpentry course? Nope? Okay. I thoroughly recommend that you do. It's a great deal of fun, and you'll learn a great deal about writing software, which is really good. And I learned quite a few things when I went to one as well. And so yes, the other thing that we do is we promote best practice as well. So we have a number of case studies on our website which you can have a look at, and you can see how we've actually helped a lot of these communities develop their software, a lot of these projects. And this is good because the way that we actually structure the case studies is so that it's accessible to lots of different people. So instead of going into the nuts and bolts of all the kind of science that's being improved, what we do is you raise the abstraction level and actually show it in a way that can be understood by others. So they can say, that's very similar to the kind of thing that we would like to see improved as well. And perhaps the SSI can help us there. Right, so moving on quickly, yes, I've already mentioned that there's loads of best practice guides on the website. And one thing that's new, that's just come online, is a software evaluation service. You can actually self-assess your software. If you go to our website and you click on Software Evaluation Service, I think, in one of the Services tabs, then you can actually go through a process that will actually help you to evaluate your software yourself. And you can see what kind of level of maturity it's at, and perhaps see what could be improved in terms of the software. Maybe that's useful. And so we do a number of events and roadshows as well. And one of those things that we do is something called the Collaboration Workshop, which is quite a neat idea. Basically what we do is we get funders such as EPSRC and JISC, and we get loads of developers, and we also get researchers together on the scale of about between, say, 40 and 70 people. And what we do is we have a very flexible schedule. So basically people can decide what they want to talk about, what kinds of issues they really want to discuss. So it could be something like how to manage software development within their communities. It could be anything they want. And on the day, what we do is we then basically dynamically schedule each of these different agenda items for discussion. So this means we get some very, very interesting results coming out, and people get to drive the agenda. So it's very much like an unconference, if any of you are familiar with the term. We also partner with a number of other organisations as well to try and impart these skills and techniques. For example, through the Sucker programme, with digital social research as well, which is something we did last year with Dave DeRoy. And also we help out training with software carpentry as well. And we started to run our own software carpentry courses now as well. And so, very quickly moving on, is we also have something called the Agents Network. And this is a rather interesting idea. Basically, researchers from all kinds of fields can apply, and they can get up to £3,000 travel money. And the idea here is they effectively act as agents for the SSI by giving us community intelligence. What's going on in their communities? What's going on in their fields of research? What's interesting happening, in terms of the software that's being developed? Are there any interesting challenges? Are there interesting problems? Are there projects that need assistance? So this way we can actually pool all this intelligence and also not only try to help those that actually require it, but also identify trends, common problems that are identified within all these different domains. So if you're interested, we've actually got a recruitment drive which is happening next month for this. And this is an opportunity to apply and get free money for travel. Well, it's not, of course, completely free. You have to supply reports on basically what you're doing, who you've managed to talk to, what's going on in your communities. But it's a pretty slim ask, I think. Right, so time?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. In that case, I will go on to one case study of something that we did. So at the University of Southampton, basically there was a team of researchers, and they were basically they've been developing this piece of software called Core VRE for a great many years. And basically what they wanted to do within the VRIC project was to integrate it into the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital system. And this basically involved integrating with lots of different NHS systems, facility systems based on site. And they were able to do this, but what they really wanted to do was share the code to others. And this was a real problem. And so what they did is they came to us and said, could you have a look at the software and see how we could do this? So we evaluated the sustainability of the software, and we were able to provide some ideas for improvement, some recommendations. And now, based on that, they've improved the software. And because of that, well, in part because of that, there's been a follow-on project, JISC follow-on project, which has helped to extend the life of VRIC, and it's being used now within cancer research, neurosurgery and nursing. And so you can actually go to the follow-on project URL there and have a look to see how that's been improved. There's also a blog that I run as well, which is really a bit of fun. But basically, if you have a technical question to do with software development, or anything really in terms of sustainability of software, feel free to ask a question, and I'll see if I can answer it for you. If I can't answer it, I'll see if someone else can answer it for me. So that's receiving 200 to 300 hits a month. And of course, we have lots of resources. We have our website with our guides, case studies, lots of other information as well. We also have a very active blog, a couple of thousand hits a month. We have lots of resources on SlideShare if you want to look at some of our presentations. We have videos on YouTube and also have a Twitter feed as well. And so if you're interested, have a look at the website and talk to me later. I'll be down the pub. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.